Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is June 7, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Joey Huerta. Joey, pronounce your last name once so they hear it correctly.
Huertas. I'm just Joey from the Bronx, man. So yeah.
Joey from the Bronx. Where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm calling from Westchester County. My neighbor literally is Molly Ringwald, so this is a very John Hughesy type of neighborhood.
The first question, Joey, is what is the best thing for a human being?
Living.
Oh my God. Long live the living. That's Louis Buñuel. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
When it comes out of self-interest.
Nice. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Selfishness.
Wow, I never get that answer. And do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
We invent everything. The only innate thing is breathing, sleeping, and eating if you can do that.
You are smart. This is fun, Joey. You get it. Do thoughts create emotions?
Do thoughts create emotions? I'm from the Bronx. What's going on with profanity here? Is this rated PG?
No, you could say whatever you want.
All right. So do thoughts create emotions? If I think that someone cuts me off and they're an asshole, I'm going to get mad. So proof is in the pudding. Thoughts create emotions. So if you come to the city, be very careful. People are very emotional because they're thinking stuff's coming at them at every angle, at every second of the day. Right now, we're in a smog, by the way. This Canadian wildfire thing is off the chains. It's as sepia toned as these sunglasses.
Wow.
The sky's crazy right now over here. It's very surreal. It's very Buñuel.
Woo. Joey, fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
do it.
Nice. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. Doing it is what it's all about. Okay, so here's Chomsky saying a language is not. Oh, wait, I left one out. Sorry, first. Can humans think without language?
Yes.
Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's culture, tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Joey, what do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I move my body.
That is great. Move my body. You know, one of
my smile takes you long.
Oh, move my body and smile. That, you know what James Brown said that to this move my body? He says, I've got a move that tells me what to do. Isn't that amazing that a move of your body tells you what to do?
Love James
moving your body. That's good. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we feel before we think. So I would say that to survive, we have to feel and act on the feeling of being hungry, act on the feeling of wanting companionship, act on the feeling of survival, and the other stuff comes secondary. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad.
Yeah. 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. 1, is thinking a function of the soul?
No, because there's a lot of soulless people out there.
Wow. 2, can machines think?
Can machines think? We are machines. That's why communism is such a dangerous thing. On paper, it looks great. When you put it into action, it doesn't work. So, yeah,
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I pursue. Well, what does it mean to be happy? I'm,
You're answering
I'm
it.
asking you that. What does it mean to
I
be
know
happy?
you're answering a question with a question. You win. That's what this series is all about, inventing new questions. Bingo. High five. Dude. But I mean, in general, this is where I got the question. You can tell. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he says that meaning generally lasts longer. Happiness doesn't necessarily last.
Mm, that's
What's your
true.
take on that?
Say it one more time.
That meaning tends to last. Happiness doesn't necessarily last.
Hmm. Yeah, well, the meaning of something can be passed on to others. It could be passed on generations, as he has proven with his writing. Happiness is not only fleeting; it is a personal experience that you cannot just commit that to a mass crowd. But the meaning of something, the storytelling of an event, you can pass on. So, yep.
Good. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
We're creating it, especially
Wow.
us. We're artists. We create all of this.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of thought.
Dude, no right or wrong, but you got high five.
Uh,
Okay. Okay. Now to
let me explain that one though, because speed of
oh,
light.
please.
Yeah, speed of light is something that it can be equated. It's a mathematical thing, right? You can measure light. You
Yeah.
could a thought, and I know this from being a social worker. Oh, how a person thinks, you can try to modify that and try to work on that and try to change that. But for the most part, we repeat our histories. We repeat ourselves,
Yeah.
and so how we think repeats itself. So, and that happens faster, in my opinion, than the speed of light. You can predict that prior than it happens.
Well put. And because I rush through these, you can always go, "Hey, let me talk."
Yeah.
I'm always welcome for having anecdotes, stories, and articulating more details. So the poet Audre Lorde said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer responded and said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
To dismantle it.
Well, this is a good question. You just because I open up a question with a cute quote, it doesn't mean you have to apply it. The basic question is, what tool do you gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and you can add the phrase to dismantle the master's house if you want.
Mm. Well, I wouldn't want to do this, but to dismantle a master's house, shame would be the tool to use.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's sad.
Is shame more innate or more invented in humans?
It's innate.
Wow. Okay, what new toy do you suggest?
That's easy. They moved me around a lot when I was a kid. So I have a lot of toys that every year I lost. So I would want those toys back.
Wow, your lost toys. That's amazing.
100%.
What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
The boogeyman.
You mean Boogie as in John Lee Hooker or Boogie as a horror film?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. You know why John Lee Hooker wore sunglasses on stage?
No.
Because he didn't want the audience to know he was crying.
Wow.
Isn't that heavy? That makes me cry every time I hear it.
You just told on me, man. Okay.
Okay, McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Joey, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
You got to say that all over again.
Yeah. So there's hidden psychic effects of, say, film. We know what film does to us, but there's other things deeper that film does to us. So film is broadcasting what humans do, or that it's saying something deeper than just the entertainment level, let's say.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's a hidden psychic effect of film.
Yeah.
So the people who use film are some of them are broadcasting these hidden psychic effects. That's why we're in the experimental film world.
Sure.
Maybe there's a little deeper level. Why do humans see these things and still ignore them?
Mm. Because when an artist is able to vessel that kind of stuff and present it well, that stuff hurts. It's painful, and it takes a certain amount of bravery to acknowledge that what has happened with that work, it transcends the artist. It's its own entity, and it has tapped into something not only that the artist may be experiencing, but obviously the lay public.
Yeah. Well done. Really articulate, Joey. I appreciate that. Do artists have a moral obligation?
No, zero.
You're knocking them out of the park, dude. I love you. Okay. Are you more afraid of old ideas or new ideas?
That's very easy. Go to the library and go to the history section and look up World War I, World War II. I'm very scared of old ideas. I have no fear of the new ideas.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
My earliest memory would be me opening up a small fridge on vacation in a hotel room. But after that, the secondary one is a more resolute one where it's I grew up in the Bronx on St. Lawrence Avenue, and I was an altar boy. And I had to attend mass at 6 a.m., 5:36 in the morning, and I had to go up St. Lawrence Avenue. And my mother would be tired in the morning, so she said, "Listen," and I loved Fonzie and Happy Days and Henry
Yeah.
Winkler. So my mother said, if you walked by yourself, I was very shy. And right after mass, by the way, then I just went. School was connected to the church. So she said, if you walk up there by yourself and go and come back after school, I'll buy you a Fonzie T-shirt. And I did that, and I got my Fonzie T-shirt, and that had a huge impact on my knowledge that I can be an independent person.
Wow. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Memory is an absolute curse because I'm going to tell you why. Because ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
I wish I had none of my memories.
That is good.
I don't remember the movies I made.
Okay, so tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
It has to be a family member, a blood relative.
No, no, there's no have to. It's the first part is within your immediate family, and then the second part is outside your immediate family. You know,
That's
you can define what immediate family is however you like.
yeah. And that serviced as a role model. That served
That
as a
was
role model.
kinda like a role model. Someone had an impact on you, and what did you get from them mainly?
Hmm. Two, right? One immediate and the other family.
Oh,
Correct.
yeah.
All right. So immediate would be my mother, uh, who passed away in 2021. Um, and she didn't die from cancer. She was, in my opinion, murdered by
Wow.
cancer. And I watched her. I watched her accept her pending death and that slow murder with such bravery, dignity, and love
Wow.
that it was awe inspiring, and I learned just how much not only loved my mother, but how much respect I had gained for her as a human being. It's
Wow.
so many people are experience dread and fear, and she was absolute acceptance, and it was like watching this person get murdered.
Wow. Really touching, well put there, the way you described it, I really felt I understood it.
I
Okay, now
buried her next to Miles Davis, by the way. I know you're into
oh
jazz.
my
She's in
god, are you
Woodlawn. She's right there next to Max Roach and Duke Ellington, and everyone's at Woodlawn at the jazz section.
wow.
Because I would play her jazz, I would play her music as this was happening, as she, in hospice.
Wow. Okay, now outside your immediate family.
Yes. Okay. So I won't use names here, but there was a person who, in the type of work I do, working. I was an art therapist and then a social worker, so I've worked with a huge, varying population of people. Uh, Many who have been involved in the criminal system. I've worked with lifers, life termers, people who are in prison for life. And when I was an art therapist, I did work with various female inmates who had taught themselves how to do art in prison. And there was one particular person who I was very close to. She was a female inmate since her youth, since the age of 19. She got terminal brain cancer. She taught herself how to do art in prison, and I was at her deathbed. They had even removed her leg, and the crime was a well-known crime that's on all the TV shows once every couple of years. And she wanted, and her immediate family, for her to be able to be with them at the time of her imminent death. So it's called a compassionate release.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few people that went in front of the parole board, and back then it was Governor Schwarzenegger, and petitioned that for her ability to have to be with her immediate loved ones at the last week as she was going to pass away. That was not given to her. And I bring this up just because you asked about someone. This was a person who, after that happened, that hearing, me and her husband went to her bed in the prison, in the infirmary, and they had a TV set. There was a monitor. The news was playing these events, and I said, "Do you want me to turn this off? You don't want to watch this, right?" And while this is happening, there's also all this hate mail coming in for. This is a woman who was 60 something, and this happened when she was 19, and she was involved in a cult. And she said, "No, Joey, you don't have to turn it off." She was in a place with her spiritual self, that stuff didn't bother her. And she held my hand, she held her husband's hand, and she prayed. And again, she had one of her legs amputated because of a blood clot. And people were writing hate mail. I hope you die. They called her Stumpy. Okay, and she was so resolute, and she was so there was something so admirable about this state of self-imposed penance, that she had true remorse for what had happened in this crime, and she was very intact with a spiritual side that was way beyond anything I could understand. And so to this day, I have such a deep respect for her and love for her, and I hope she's resting in peace along with the victims of that crime.
Well described. Again, I really felt I understood what you were saying, Joey. Thank you. So, you were raised Roman Catholic. Do you pray?
I don't pray every day, but I do pray. There are no atheists in foxholes. That's what I believe.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Okay. Joey, you were right. The Patterson Gimlin film was an actual Bigfoot. You were right. You would confirm what I always knew, is that there is Bigfoot, in that film from Patterson in the 60s and 67 was real in Bluff Creek. Yeah.
I love it. Very good, Joe. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Do evil people exist? First of all, I couldn't do the type of work I do if I believed that. Number one. Number two, do good people exist? Sure. Are they good
Yeah.
Are they good all the time? Do evil people exist? People who do acts that are deemed evil exist.
Yeah.
As far as evil people, once again, I take pride in the work that I do, because I don't judge people like that.
Yeah.
People are far more complicated than that, and there are circumstances that are sometimes beyond anything we can conceive. As far as environment, that old thing, nurture versus nature. Nurture loads the gun. Nature loads the gun. Nurture pulls the trigger. I see it every day, and I for over 20 years, I've worked with people who, if you read on paper what they've been associated with, it would, for the general public, it would blow their minds. They would say they were evil, and I've experienced. I've had experiences with them that I wouldn't trade off for any raise that the current governor may consider giving me, which I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to happen. So.
Joey, amazing. No one's ever flipped that. Do good people exist? That's beautiful how you flipped that too and described it. But just a side question, where do you think you got that? The way your parents raised you, or on your own? That sense that you can see the good in there, that everyone's capable of good and evil.
Absolutely did not get that from my parents. Absolutely got that myself. As a child, there was first of all, I used to hang out in a pond and go fishing every day with turtles. So I felt more connected with turtles than other kids. And I was bullied. I was shy and I was bullied. And there were times where even at lunchtime, I would lock myself up in a bathroom during the lunch hour, just to not be around all the bullying and the commotion. And something happened during that, prior to discovering art and music and then film, where I learned how to build up a force field and a sense of my own my own self, that I was I was I was able to not be angry, and I didn't even have to forgive whoever was
Yeah.
hurting me. It would just bounce off of me, because I very much knew that I was so much. They really, these people didn't really even know me.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I was just able to, which I think most artists probably do, is really have a good sense of who you are and yourself, in order to have a confidence, in order to invite other things, which is what happens when you create art. It's almost like you're inviting this possession that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked this kid who's raised a Buddhist from like, 4 years old till he was 14 or 18. I says, "What have you learned being raised a Buddhist?" He says, "Not to hate."
Hmm.
It's a beautiful sentiment. Okay, so the real hidden question there is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, Joey, how would you
Lots
respond
of
to?
great questions, man. Like, your questions are like, whew, next level. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you.
They're great.
Um, before you answer how you advise someone to deal with an enemy, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
So the first question is, how do I answer? How do I respond to? Is, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
That's the first part of the question. How would you respond to Alan Watts saying that? Yeah.
If you acknowledge them, well, you have to acknowledge them, because they're your enemy, because they've acknowledged you and you've reciprocated. So the acknowledgement is there. Now, as far as their behaviors and their acts of aggression, or enticement, then that is something that you can play act like you're blowing it off, or that it's just bouncing right off of you. But the fact that they're your enemy in and of itself says that that relationship has already happened. The enemy thing, the foe thing has happened already.
Yeah. But I mean, if one of your kids have trouble with a bullying and an enemy, how do you advise them? What do you advise them to do?
Hmm. Well, I really like this movie. It just came out recently, called Tar, with
Yeah.
Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
And this kind of situation happens. And I'm not saying I would do this, but in the movie, the parent, the mother, Blanchett, goes up to that kid and said, "Are you so and so? You're the one doing to so and so? If this ever happens again, I'm going to." And the kid never bothered her daughter again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would do that, but
Yeah. But you mean it was effective?
I think a bully has to be confronted, and a
Yeah.
bully has to be shown that they're not feared.
Yeah. Well, it begs for this,
And you got to put the spotlight. Sometimes I think sometimes a person like that is not aware. They're not even aware of their actions.
Yeah.
I once had a bully, and then we had a fight, and then we were literally best friends. If anything, he kissed my ass afterwards. So
Yeah.
sometimes you have to have that engagement, and then sometimes it's far more complicated than enemy stuff. It's almost like a reaching out, where they're trying to connect. There's this weird vibe going on, and they can't even comprehend it, And that's why some of the greatest marriages are from two people who really didn't like each other in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't really know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. In fact, someone said villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he say, wow, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question, Joey, is, does punishment work?
Punishment can, not that it does, but punishment can work. And the only way it can work is if it forces that person to privately regurgitate what has happened and the consequences of what has happened and what could happen. You worked with Frank Zappa. God bless you for that. And I used to, as a kid, I never forget this Frank Zappa thing. Besides the PMRC, is that Dweezil Zappa, his son and daughter Moon Unit, sometimes they would together host MTV.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would talk about their childhood, and they
Yeah.
were the funnest duo to watch interact together. And I never forget that they said that their dad, when they would argue and have a very bad, ugly fight, their dad would lock them up in the closet, and he wouldn't let them out of the closet until they resolved their problem. And they said that that's what made them best friends.
That's good.
Isn't that incredible? It's like,
you resolve that shit in a small space quick, or you're gonna be miserable.
That's
it. Yeah, I have a fond memory. Those two sang happy birthday to me once, and I was really honored. Yeah.
Wow, I used to love that record he put out. He worshipped, then Dweezil worshipped Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, and he put this record. I used to love that. I used to play that song over and over. I'm having a bad day. I'm having a bad day with the green guitar. Yep. And it was so cool. He was so talented. You know, he is talented. Yep. But yeah, I used to love, and I used to love watching them interact together. And they're both doing different things right now. But yeah,
good memory there, dude.
Yeah.
In fact, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
That's kind of like gonzo journalism. And I feel like I kind of follow that ethos with the kind of work that I do. Yeah, so unfortunately, more people don't do what you described, and more people should. I think it's lacking. I think when I see all this great production stuff on all of this streaming media now with Hulu and Netflix, everything's so pristine and perfect, but it lacks, even the reality shows, it lacks this particular thing you're talking about, which is the artist's full submersion into that topic of interest. But it could be because a lot of that stuff is corporate, and it looks like it's fun and cool and you know, coming from one particular mindset, but it's probably approved by a board.
Yeah. Back to Louis Buñuel said, if you come out of a movie and go, wasn't the cinematography great? The filmmaker failed.
I agree with that.
That's a heavy statement. So what first, let's go through your three main careers of social worker, filmmaker, musician. What was the tipping point? You're growing up, you go to high school, and do you study something in college? Where did you go, oh, that's what I want to do? that's my calling. I want to pursue that. The 3 tipping points for those 3 moves in your life.
Okay. Well, it should be pretty easy. So it started with music, and and drums. So I'll be a musician and a drummer till the day I drop dead. First and foremost, period. I play drums every day. But so it started with drums, getting drumsticks in a flea market in Wappinger Falls. I never forget getting them. Um, and a tattoo of Kiss. Back then, Kiss was really big. Elvis had died, and they were doing Kiss tattoos with magic markers back then in the flea market, in the drive-in theater flea market. And I got obsessed with drumming, and my parents, they wouldn't get me drums because they're loud and noisy. So what I would do, I was so obsessed that I took a paper hole puncher and a stapler, and I mimicked like those were foot pedals, and then I would air drum to air. And my grandmother, rest in peace, one day walked in the garage. I was with my German Shepherd, Lucky, and I remember she saw that, and she respected that I was doing this every day. Like, just all she heard was clickety click, and it was just a stapler and the punch hole puncher, and I'm like twirling my sticks like Tommy Lee. So she took me. She was a really tough New Yorker. She took me to Manny's. There used to be back then in Midtown, they had Manny's and Sam Ash, and you would walk up almost like Kim's video. You walk up all these stairs, and there was a cymbal floor, and there was a drum floor, and whatever. And she said, "Get a couple of cymbals. I'm gonna get you some cymbals." So she bought me. Peisty 404s. I'll never forget that. And she bought those cymbals for me. So now I'm in the garage with a stapler, a hole puncher, sticks, and cymbals, and making all this noise. This is a true story. And then we moved to Virginia, and then I'm in the garage with this. And now, at one day at lunchtime, someone comes up to me, sitting by myself, and I used to go to all the concerts. I might have been Alice Cooper, Constrictor. I used to have the shirts. That's when I got introduced to Man from Utopia, by the way, with all the Deadheads. They introduced me to Man from Utopia, and they were, "Oh man, you go to all these rock shows, you got to check out Man from Utopia. This guy's thing. He got a 17-year-old kid named Steve Vai. He sent him a cassette. You got to listen to this stuff, bro." That's when I got into Zappa. So they said, "Listen, are you living on?" It was called Hubbard Lane. I said, "Are you living on Hubbard Lane? I hear cymbals." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." It's like, "Why? What? It sounds good, but it's just cymbals." So that propelled me to beg my parents, "Listen, if I get a job at myself, can I buy my own drums?" So they allowed me, and I worked at down south. I lived down south then, and it was at Hardee's. It was like McDonald's. So I flipped burgers for a couple of weeks, and I saved money, and I got myself a small little, really bad Buddy Rich kind of Slingerland kit. I still have pictures of it. And then I taught myself every day. I mean, I was just every day playing the Van Halen and everything. And I self-taught myself. By the way, I self-taught myself how to play everything: drums, guitar, keyboards. Because I do the soundtrack and the music for all of my films. I take pride in that. So anyway, from that I got into the whole band scene. One of the guys who I was very close with, his name's Mark Morton. He's in a band now called Lamb of God. We've been in touch. We are in touch. He's in a band called Lamb of God now, so they've had success. But what happened with me is after music, and then I got into the punk scene and the hardcore scene, and then I put so much of myself and my heart into writing all the music. I wrote the lyrics to almost everything. And the music, and then setting up the gigs. And what happens? There's a dynamic, the old saying, a band is like a marriage, except it's a 4-way marriage. So it drained me, and it culminated with me playing CBGBs, and I would record all of our shows, all of our live shows. So I gave the guy the the sound guy at CBGB's a cassette. So when I went after the show to get the cassettes so we could listen to it, so always continue to get better, the guy said, "Oh, you can have this tape back. It'll be $10." I was like, "What do you mean $10? I gave you that cassette to record our show." He goes, "Oh, you don't have to give me $10. Watch this." So he took the cassette and he smashed it in my face. He broke it to shreds. And that was it, man. And I went to the Bronx Zoo. I told the band, go back. And I went to Bronx Zoo. I had longer hair than this. I cut all my hair off at the Bronx. So I thought I was going to change my life and be everything that my family always wanted to be, which was a clean cut. I don't know what.
Yeah.
And then I got thrown out of school. So I went and begged to go back to school again because I left music. It was like getting my heart broken. And my girlfriend left me. Everything collapsed on me.
Yeah.
And then they let me go take a class at a time. And then I started doing photography and video. And I started winning all of these awards one at a time. And then what happened was I said, I saw a movie. I left music, right? I never played drums. I put it like in a mausoleum, like in a tomb. It was a big chest.
Yeah.
And I really meant it. I was not going to do play that anymore. And I saw this movie. It was two movies that had this impact. But I started going to the library and reading a lot about movies. That's how I was dealing with this depressive state. And I saw this movie by Spike Lee called Mo Better Blues.
Yeah.
It's about this jazz player who loves playing his instrument, the trumpet, and he has a best friend, and his best friend has a gambling problem. By the end of the movie, he defends his friend who has a gambling problem, and he gets attacked with his own instrument, and they break his mouth, and he can never play his instrument again.
Oh.
I couldn't stop crying. Like it was, but just like it punched, and then I realized if something can have this much of an impact. And by the way, back then Spike Lee really had an art to what he was doing. Not that he doesn't anymore, but I mean, he was using Terrence Blanchard. I mean, his father was a jazz player, bass player.
Yep.
So I said, I want to study film. So I went to the public library and I consumed myself with film history.
Go back, Joey, for 1 sec.
Yes.
The other movie, you said there were two movies, Mo Better Blues, and there was another movie.
Yeah, man. And that was a biggie. And the other one was Ingmar Bergman is Hour of the Wolf. And Ingmar Bergman is what put me, the thing punched me in the face is I got to do movies. If I, if this can have that. And then, so when I started exploring and I got that movie, Bergman, it horrified me. It was one of his only surrealist movies he made. People are walking on the ceiling, but it put me to sleep. It both put me to sleep and knocked me out and then terrified me. And I said, if a movie can also put me to sleep and terrify me, and to this day, Ingmar Bergman is on my top 5. Sorry, I went to Faroe Island. I recommend anybody watching this, you got to go at least once to Bergman Island, to the Bergman Annual Festival. It's an unbelievable experience. He shot most of his movies there, a lot of the movies on that island. So those were the two movies. Thank you for remembering that. So I literally went to the public library in Newport News, Virginia, and I took my finger and I said, if I want to be the best, if I really want to do this, I had no support. I was living in an apartment by myself. My parents had moved to Ohio, and I closed my eyes and I said, I know New York. I'm from the Bronx. I'll go to New York and I look. So I asked the librarian, I said, what are the film schools in New York? So she opened up the thing and it was like NYU, which I'm so glad I didn't go to, very commercial, and it was Cooper Union, whatever, Purchase. So I went, closed my eyes, I said, wherever my finger lands, that's where I'm going to apply to it. And that's it. And if it's meant to be, that's what I'm going to. And that was the one my finger landed on and I applied. And then it was very competitive. It's like Flashdance. You got to be interviewed like 3 times. And then the final interview, they want to see something you've done. I hadn't made any movie. So I was a lyricist. I was a musician. So one of the songs I wrote was called I Loving Me. Yeah. So I took the lyrics and I went to the bathroom. And back then they had these video stores, right? So I went to a Blockbuster Video. You could rent the giant, ridiculous Porta-Pack VHS cameras. So I rented the camera for the weekend. I went to my bathroom and I told my roommate, I had a roommate. I said, listen, can you do me a favor? Help me out. I'm going to make this movie by myself in the bathroom. Once in a while, And I remember I had studied all Scorsese. So I understood drawing out frames with Hitchcock drawing out every storyboard without going to film school. I went to my own independent film school, and I made this movie. And to this day, people swear it's my best movie. And it's all about a song I wrote called "I Love Me." It's about this person who falls in love with themselves. So Cisco is short for narcissist, and they fall in love with themselves in the mirror, and they experience all the levels of jealousy. And the movie ends that the relationship crumbles in the bathroom with the phone ringing nonstop, and the person has like a psychological breakdown and goes boom. So that movie got me into film school. And
Cooper. You went to Cooper?
I went to Purchase.
You went to Purchase. Yeah.
I went to Purchase.
What a great story.
Yeah, it is. It was, and I had some wild teachers. You had asked me when I spoke with you at Amber who were my professors. Purchase has a habit of rotating adjuncts. So, there's Hal Hartley's, Evan Malotman, all kinds of folks, Peter Stein. And so then while in film school, you asked for part 3 of this, where, the next step was drums, film, and now social work. So during film school, I got very close with this fellow classmate of mine, Michael Loomish, God bless him. We were like that. So we worked on all of our projects together. He was also a Bergman freak. In addition to he introduced me to the films of transgression, Zed and Kern and all that stuff, and Lydia Lunch, and he was into Woody Allen. I was so with Woody Allen, but he ended up having a very severe depression, and he ended up taking his life. So Michael died at the beginning of senior year. He wasn't coming to class anymore junior year. When this happened, obviously it had an immense impact on me. I walked when the professor announced it. I took a walk around the campus, and it was like a state of flow where I walked probably 20 miles.
Wow.
And I said to myself, the best way to deal with this, to figure this out, would be to do volunteer work with people who had major depression. So that's what I did. So I would do volunteer work twice a week for hospitals for people who had major depression. And I worked with since I was getting an art degree, a fine arts degree, I was able, and then they offered one thing led to another, and they said, listen, you're very good with the patients, and they love you, and you're really good with abstract art. Can we hire you? I was like, what? And I was working at Sound One. I was doing Foley work, like sound work. I was working with De Niro on Ronin. I was doing the sandal sounds, and doing the ADRs, and So but when you work for a place like Sound One, which is closed now, you go there, and I thought as an artist, as a filmmaker, that if you go in there at 8 in the morning, 7:30, 8 in the morning, then you have access, and you do after hours. You work there, you have access to all this equipment as long as they're not working. I think, which usually after 10 or 11, you're so exhausted. The work is so draining when you're running around. I was helping Spike Lee on Girl 6. So you're tired, and then you don't have the energy I said to myself, I'd rather drive a cab than do this kind of work. So or wash dishes than do this.
Because then you save your energy for making your art instead.
And you got nothing to talk. What are you going to talk about? The guy who's sound editing, who's getting a divorce? What are you going to write about? Or it's true. So then what happened was it hit me like, whoa, if I go actually get another degree in this field, social work, man, I got a lock. I could do my artsy fartsy stuff. I could show at galleries. Because they're struggling artists hanging frames in museums, galleries, right? Trying to pay their rent. I could work, as a social worker. And it's almost like being a nurse. You'll always have a job. There's people getting more and more fucked up, and obviously, so you're always going to have a job. So I said, let me get a degree in this, and I did get a degree, and then I ended up locking that down where I can do that kind of a 9-to-5 kind of way. And then you always are around life stories. You're always around people's real life stories, and it's always inspiring, and not replicating those stories, but just being reminded of just how complex life is, and you always you're never lacking. You know, it's like people struggle to go to the Met to get inspired and go to the Monet room. This is like every day or every other day, you're just around stuff that can hit a spark. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad I chose that path, and then I mix it up with making work that it doesn't matter if I've been successful and I've shown in festivals, and at this point, honestly, I could care less. I'd be much happy living in Amherst like Emily Dickinson and letting people find my movies when I'm dead. I really don't care about
Yeah.
being successful or showing, and I've done all that already. I've shown. I just want to make work, and I love, I love that I got back into the drums now, and I do it for myself, and I compose for my movies. I'm working on my first feature right now. That's a whole nother story, because I usually did shorts like poems. I blabbed away, but I hit all the 3 marks.
Yeah. Dude, Joe, you said it so well, and let's go off on this for a second now. A screenwriting teacher told me great film, great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're making a short film, and now your feature, what role does intention play in your creative process?
Yeah. So I'm doing my feature, right? I'm working on a feature now. Never have done that. So I call them like poems, shorts. Sometimes I would pump them out, sometimes 2 a month. It was just like, a feature is longer, right? So there's a danger to that, because what a person does, and I can only speak for myself, is you try to say, okay, how can I do what I did small on a larger scale? And then you start to try to figure that out and think about that. And that's not good. It hurts the process. It makes you back off. It's the best way to approach anything, whether I've just learned recently and I'm still reminding myself, is it's like a writer. And I identify with the writing community the most. You just really have to go, like they say, oh, at least write a line a day, or you just have to go there and start. And once you start, and the great thing about this nonlinear editing is you can start to, it's like painting. You can just start putting stuff together and letting it, just letting it letting the work speak for itself rather
Yeah.
than speak for it. So this
Yeah.
feature started where I just had a really coherent, strong idea. And at this point, I almost feel bad for like the actors or actresses, because they might be cut out, because at this point the thing is taking a life of its own, and it's,
Yeah.
So I hope
But
I answered it. Did I answer?
you answered it well. And in fact, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer when you're making a film?
0.
Yeah.
Sure, yes.
And then same with music. How much are you thinking of your listener when you're writing a song?
Mhm. Yeah. So music will hit me differently, because as a drummer, I was quite a performer, a showman. I was drawn more to the Ginger Bakers, to the Tommy Lees, to the Ringos, to the showman. So I think inherently, when I do music, I think like that. But a lot of the stuff I'm doing for my films, and I love doing, is a lot of this, like taking samples, street samples, just sampling sounds of sewers, of whatever, of the wind, of the Sandy storm I recorded, and then manipulating that with software and stuff, and making music out of sounds. There's some great European artists, Lustmord, a band called Bee Queen. These are people who would record like I actually have some here. Like this one guy did this Arecibo, it's called. I highly recommend it to anybody. I don't know if I can get in the camera.
Yeah.
And it's just recording the satellite dishes that are trying to reach out for alien life, and then all the sonar sounds and the quasars, and then creating music out of that.
Yeah.
Or Crash Injury Trauma, which is Lustmord, where he just took sound bites of car engines and car accidents, and then creating a whole
Yeah.
soundscape from it. So yeah, so I'm interested in creating music from more from sound excerpts and sound recordings, field sound
Yeah.
recording, and then creating something from that where it's not as didactic, where I'm not just writing a song with lyrics, you know.
Yeah. In fact, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. Like knife and fork extends our teeth. The shut the shutter in a camera is an extension of our eyelid, and maybe like philosophy or religion might be an extension of consciousness. What does the drum stick extend for you? What humanness?
Mm. Yeah. Um, it's definitely there's a comfort that comes, you know, who I feel expressed that best, who's not a drummer, who's Edward Van Halen.
Yeah.
When that guy put a guitar around his body, it was like another appendage. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't just how great he was at songwriting and playing the guitar, and the reason he was so good at that, and the reason he had that Frankenstein guitar, was he would dismantle it and put it back together, and it was like a part of him.
Yeah.
And I would say that for a drummer, I would say John Densmore is like that. I would say that Stuart Copeland is like that. There's so many drummers that have that.
Yeah.
The drumsticks are just it's like an extended fingers of your limbs, of your arms, that
Yeah.
you're able to participate in the music delivery without taking over it. I became a better drummer now in a room with a mixed hybrid kit of electric drums, and because they've really improved the drums.
Yeah.
They've improved the mesh pads and stuff. The electric drums. It feels like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing what they've done with it. I've become a better drummer now without the band thing, because now I'm paying closer attention to every tom, every cymbal,
Yeah.
every splash, every accent, and I just do it because honestly, with the drums right now, it's like people go to the gym for an hour. I go on my drum set
Yeah.
for an hour, and I do it not just for cardio. I do it because I love playing drums.
Yeah. It's beautiful, Joey. And Ruth Draper has an amazing thing. She said the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. And it is they who give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. Now, you found that, now you've matured to this point where you create in the room by yourself. But there was a time when you performed with an audience, and you stress this showmanship of like Ginger Baker. How does it, this is, really articulate what Ruth said, you bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. How do you do that?
It's great what you said. I flip it. I disagree, and I'm going to give you proof in the pudding.
Please.
When I was especially in the hardcore punk scene, when a person dives off the stage,
Yeah.
it's not only because you're being absorbed by the energy of the music. There is a trust that happens where it's, in my opinion, it's the audience they're pulling that person into the crowd. They want to be one with the person, and I think it's the other way around. I think it's the audience. I think look at Jim Morrison. He was singing with his back to the audience for how long? I mean, it was the audience that basically said, listen, turn around. We want you. We want this music. And the audience will pull you in. So I don't know if
So well put, Joey. I'll give you an example. Iggy's stage dove his whole life. He's fucking gonna live longer than the cockroaches. But he's doing the Dalai Lama event at Carnegie Hall, and he stage dives, and all these fucking yuppies go, "Excuse me," and they let him hit the fucking floor. And he says, I never stage dive again. And then within a week, he's stage diving.
Oh, I didn't know that. I saw him with the limp, and I saw that. It was very scary to see. You know, after that happened, he got back on stage. God bless him. But yeah, I saw that. Yeah, yeah. Well, listen,
But
man.
you flipped it. See, you're a deep thinker. You flip a lot of these things. People think that just because I say something, it's accurate. And you're like, no, I disagree. And you flip it. This is really important. In
Yeah,
fact, here,
but Jerry, it is that for that person who said that, for them it is accurate because,
yeah,
you know, for them they want to make sure that
right.
they're providing good music to the audience. You know, I nothing against.
But I understand it's not that there's one way or the other, but
Yeah,
you using the stage diving trust thought is amazing. But here's Leonard Cohen. The only way you the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
yeah. I mean, there's only certain stuff I can say here because of what my goal is with this feature. But I think, yeah, I agree with that, and that's not happening right now with cinema and film. Everything's very safe.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember anything. What would be the closest thing to that? I don't know. A lot of people love Tarantino. I mean, I used to wish that guy was hung when that movie Pulp Fiction came out. I mean, I was just like, this guy, that's it. He just ruined independent cinema. You got John Travolta, who I like. He's making independent films that we used to have to get 3 or 4 credit cards to make. This guy now turned it into an industry.
Yeah.
Apologies to the audience who loved the guy. I'm sorry. The last movie was pretty good though, cinematically. That whole the Hollywood movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, visually.
Yeah.
But he's, you know, listen, the guy said he's going to leave after 10 years of making, after 10 movies. No filmmaker says that. That's like a record of music. Like Frank Zappa said, oh, well, I'm just going to make my 10th record and I'm calling it quits. Then you weren't ever a fucking musician. And neither is Tarantino. He's a fucking video store guy who found, you know, he ran out of fucking movies to imitate. Sorry, it's just the truth, Ruth. So,
Hey, dude, I agree with you 100%. I totally do.
man. Yeah,
But look,
it hurt us. Listen, this guy hurt independent film, man. And Michael Moore, who at first dude, when he did Bowling, there's a lot of good information in there.
yeah,
Dude, the minute he did what he did to Charles Heston, I know a lot of people like, yeah, fuck Charles Heston. No, once you start violating, people are scared to do interviews for legitimate documentary people now because of that.
yeah,
So these people, you know, these people who go into the mainstream, keep off our lawn, man. You know, keep off our lawn. And that's why out of all the music stuff I've done, I'm most proud of that last stint, which was with the punk hardcore scene, because that's the bottom of the bucket. And those are the folks who love you most. And I'm the most proud of that, you know. And then when I got into film, by the way, and I'm still very connected with the Millennium Film Workshop.
yeah,
That was the punk rock scene of the film artists, and it still is.
Yeah.
And I want to give a shout out to the Millennium Film Journal, Graham Weinbrand, who runs that magazine. So anyone watching this, please, you can show your films at Millennium Film Workshop, which is now in Brooklyn, and you can get that journal.
No, I'm 100% behind everything you just said. What does courage mean to you now?
What does courage mean to me now? What is courage like what? It wasn't there before? What do you mean?
Well, just what does courage mean to you?
What does courage mean to me? What does courage mean to me? It means that I take great pride that I was born in Jacoby Hospital in the Bronx, and I'm a Bronx boy till the day I drop dead. Bronx folks got courage. It's in the blood, man.
That is beautiful. And then Viola Spolin worked with, as a social worker, she helped invent comedy improv. Do you know this? This is an amazing story. In Chicago, she's a social worker. She starts teaching role playing, and she spawns Second City and Saturday Night Live. This is for
Wow.
real. Viola Spolin, check her out. She
Wow.
said, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role does struggle play in your creative process?
hmm In my creative process, struggle is everything. And I'm going to give you an example. This weekend, I'm going to go shark cage diving, but I'm not just going to shark cage dive for the sharks. I'm going to be filming, right? I'm not 100% sure that the camera I got, that the bag I got to cover it's going to work, but whatever I get out of it, I am most excited at the high level of fuck ups that's going to happen with this film shoot. So I love error. I used to love working on the optical printing machine at Purchase and at the JK optical printer. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Where you,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the thing with the optical printers, you're rephotographing stuff you shot. So when you do that, it's like being in the dark room, but it's beyond that, because in the dark room, you dodge and you burn and you kind of see what's going to come out of it. With the optical printer, and when you go to the lab, you got to wait and see what comes. You're experimenting, you're playing, and out of all the material you get out of that, it's like working like Zappa probably did reel to reel. Out of everything, you probably get a couple of minutes of magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I ask your question again, because basically what my whole answer is I like working with the mistakes that I make.
You answered it. It's how what role does struggle play in your creative process? You answered it well. In fact, Joey, Ben Ratliff is a music writer. He says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So you've already heard me, and you could hear a couple drum beats and go, that's Ginger. We could hear Eddie and go, that's Eddie. You know, Miles Davis, Ben Ratliff would say, oh, he's fragile and pointed. So if a music writer was going to describe Joey's sound as a musician, and in 2 words, what would you say? They got it. What 2 words would you feel honored? You'd go, they got it.
Raw. And I'm looking for one word for the other thing.
Or, you know, you can do 2 or 2 more, whatever.
Made the mistakes look beautiful.
Yeah, that's good. Now, same with film. If they were going to describe Joey's films in a couple words, what 2 would you feel they got it?
Raw and made all those effing mistakes look beautiful.
Same thing. Good. So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, Jerry, the immediacy I pursue in making art, making movies, my brain doesn't have the patience, and it's kind of wild, because I don't have the patience to sit there and learn some new camera with all the HX7L whatever 3.5 what. I have no time for that. I don't even have the patience to go on YouTube and see it. I'd rather kind of figure out how the thing powers on and what. I'm surprised I got this whole thing right now to work with. I don't know how I pulled this off, but I did, by the way, just so you know. So I don't have the patience for that. to figure it out. So I love. Go back to the question because I got the answer. Go ahead. Go.
What? Tell me a weakness you
A
turned into
weakness thing. You're right. So
strength.
the weakness is I'm terrible at
Yeah,
learning how to how to use a new camera
yeah,
or a new editing software. Um, so that weakness I turn into a strength because then what I do is every time something doesn't work right or it's pixelized or whatever, it ends up becoming a part of the language of the film.
yeah,
And to be honest with you, most recently, some of these documentaries they're making on Netflix and Hulu, they're really well cut. They're really well put together.
yeah,
But it bothers me and it fucking kills me how they're using these filters to mimic the framing of Super 8, the
yeah,
stuff that I love that fucks up when I develop it because I can't afford it. And they're just slopping the stuff on. And
yeah,
it's like, so it's upsetting, but the twist, the weird thing about it, which is exhausting, is it forces you as an artist to look for something new to move things forward that they're going to have to try to figure out how to mimic. It might be timing. That might be
yeah.
the trick. I don't want to expose too much here because TikTok, everything's information is very fast. It might be timing. I don't know, but the weakness is turning my lack of patience to learn new equipment, to learn stuff, into a strength, into incorporating into the style and aesthetic of the storytelling. That's the one thing that saves me is I'm a good storyteller because I started writing lyrics. So I'm a good storyteller. That's the anchor to the crazy visual stuff and the crazy sound stuff, actually.
Joey, you anticipated the next two questions
All right.
beautifully. You got ESP.
Okay.
Peter Greenaway said, cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers telling a story a different way or doing something completely different? If me or you watch Tony Conrad's The Flicker, just black and white flicking back and off and on for 15 minutes, we might have a story go through our heads, but it's not really literally storytelling. So are experimental filmmakers telling stories a different way or doing something completely different?
Mm-hmm. I would say telling a story differently, and here's how.
Yeah.
And I think John Cage kind of did it with 433.
Yeah.
So what happens when you experience 433? You have all these moments of silence, and your recall of that is whatever you heard in the audience and the reactions. So with what you're talking about, I can equate it to Wavelength, which is one of my favorite films
Yeah.
by Michael Snow.
Yeah.
And this slow zoom, this relentless squeak, the sound. There's the one moment where a quasi protagonist kind of fumbles around and falls. What happens to me in that movie when you watch it is, first of all, you're like, what the fuck am I watching? And then it's kind of like, you remember that moment of, what the fuck did I just experience? And it happens every time you go see Wavelength, by the way. Same with Nancy Holt's the Sunbeams.
Yeah.
The same thing happens. That's more of a land art piece, which I love,
Yeah.
by the way. But you never forget that experience. George Foreman, who's the Foreman? Well, he does these crazy shows where it's an unforgettable experience of the audience. Foreman?
Bruce?
No?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure who, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
not Bruce McClure, is it? You're talking Bruce McClure?
No.
Okay. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, these experimental artists who basically they create something that's such a what the fuck moment where you recall the work and you recall. You know who else? What else does it? I think it's brilliant film. The one Yoko did with Lennon with The Fly. I think The Fly.
Oh yeah, Yoko's Fly. Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah. No, what the fuck is such a great thing. My sort of theory is great art should fuck your shit up and make you go, I could do that. You know, it's like, oh, I could do that. Then you go home and try to do it. And it's like, whoa, it didn't come out as good as theirs, but it inspired you because it's like Sun Ra, Guy went backstage to talk to Sun Ra once. He says, my kid could play this. And Sun Ra went, but can he transcribe it? So here's the other question you anticipated. I talked to Michael Apted over 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I said, why do rock music editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922 in France, but it really flourished in the 80s to the point where Marty Scorsese said, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. So I asked this question with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
No, we clearly can. We clearly have been forced into a position of doing that. And what's to me sad about that is the backside of that is you lose the ability to experience an emotional attachment to the work. It's all just immediate gratification. It's like going on Tinder or having a relationship where you fall in love and have a family and die together.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing, man.
The hidden question, Joey, really is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
Is it literally possible for people to multitask? I can only answer for myself. There's no way you, Jerry, can do what you do, or I can do what I'm doing without having the ability to multitask. So I don't care what anyone else has told you in the past. The answer is yes. You can have the ability to multitask. Period.
Very good, Joey. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch, your guess.
That.
Well, articulate it. What do you mean by holding up an alien? Or an alien doll?
They're letting it out, and the government's letting it out in dribbles now, right? I mean, come on. It's this, what is cave art? It's a documentation of what it's journaling. It's journaling on rocks, bro.
Yeah,
we didn't just show up here, man. DNA is pretty complicated math in strands. It didn't just happen, man.
Yeah. In fact, you brought up storytelling, journaling, and Hollis Frampton said that narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
Can I forget to die? Why would I want to forget to die? Life is a bitch, man. I wanna be like them. I want to experience. I want it to drag out. I want to drag the death out. Don't make it fast. I don't want to die in my sleep. Let's make this slow, gradual. Let me say goodbye. Let me say fuck you to the asshole. Keep it nice and slow. And I hope that someone gives me a nice gravestone with nice stuff written on it.
Good, Joey.
Not, whatever. You'll remember it. I'll be online with this video. Like, look at this.
Very good. I'm curious, what are the services and disservices of marginalizing experimental film? Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 1949. Regular folks could start developing an aesthetic for experimental painting. There was no Bruce Conner or Maya Deren Life magazine covers. Generally, it's privileged, entitled rich art kids who develop an avant-garde aesthetic and dominate experimental film. Any comment?
Yes. One of the greatest experiences I had in my life, and I've had a few, was going to Jackson Pollock's barn out there by Montauk in Montauk. And I recommend anybody and everybody should go there because the house, you can tour the house and then go to the barn where he painted. The house, in my opinion, is quite a bore. It's soulless. You go to that barn and it's just run down, ramshackle barn with paint that you could like paint cans you could get at Home Depot. You got to go in there, you got to wear like these slippers, almost like operating room slippers, and you go in and you see how this person operated, how he worked. And it was just, it was, it just changes how you think about how an artist can work, which is basically, that was his sanitarium, man. That was his
Yeah.
quiet room. And
Yeah.
it was,
But the thing is this experimental film world, it's, you're a street guy. You know how people are on the street, and then you also know how people are in rich colleges, art colleges. And we don't it's not good to divide and separate, but when I go to Ann Arbor every year, it seems like just like 100 kids who are all entitled and got to go to art school and learn to develop an art aesthetic. And it's sort of dominated by this white entitled art kids. Any observation that, especially working in Millennium workshop, is it all entitled rich art white kids, or is it mix?
with Millennium, I'll talk about Millennium and Ann Arbor regarding this. With Millennium, you're going to find the best work, and I hope they watch in the what's called the open screenings, which Ken Jacobs created, and then Howard Gutzenplan ran with it, which is a night, usually once a month, where anybody can bring a work that is completed or in progress, and you show it. That's where you get the real art, film art, in my opinion.
Yeah.
As far as Ann Arbor, what I noticed, and I agree with what you're saying, but what I noticed is a flip where those kind of individuals have what I had said. What my demon was, or my fear was, my impatience for learning new technology and all these cameras. So you get a lot of people using these filters and pumping out these shorts, but the best way to see the best works I saw at Ann Arbor for a couple of consecutive years is in the feature films, the longer films, where people have to spend more time. That's where you're getting the best stuff, in my opinion. Forgive me, Ann Arbor, but I think it's the features at Ann Arbor where you're getting stuff, where you're getting more of the real canvas, moving canvas, man.
Yeah.
Millennium, it's going to be primarily in the open screenings, because they're getting stuff from all around the world, and they're getting stuff now with technology. You can get stuff forwarded using WeTransfer and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's weird, because for years I never would give anyone a break in recent years, who used a drone, because to me, a drone represents a Hollywood crane shot, meaning
that's what bothers me the most with the fucking documentaries. You always get these drone
shots. Yeah. And it's like, well, now that it's cheap, everybody's got to have it. And so it's like, the epitome was the Larry Flint documentary in Ann Arbor. It was a drone. It wasn't a drone. It was a crane shot.
Larry Flint? You said Larry Flint?
Yeah, the Larry Flint.
I was there. He had a gold wheelchair, gold plate. I was there. That was great.
It was a crane shot at the porno Oscars in Vegas. This is not Ann Arbor, let alone a fucking crane shot at a porno Oscars. Like, this is not Ann Arbor. But anyways, it was the big censorship thing.
Yes,
blah blah blah.
I agree with you, Jerry.
But see, say me and you and George Manupelli time travel 60 years back, and we're starting the Ann Arbor Film Festival. And should it be more inclusive or more exclusive? And let me suss it out. It's like, there's always a fraction of animation and documentaries, but it's mainly experimental films. I asked this with Chick Strand, who was starting Canyon Cinema with Bruce Bailey, same time. She said, in San Francisco, they were trying to recreate their 11-cent movie going experience. And they would show a newsreel, a cartoon, and then an experimental film. And Brackage came along and says, don't show the other stuff, just show experimental. So should we be, time travel 60 years back, should we be more inclusive or more exclusive?
Right. So we should always be more inclusive, but I understand that I don't understand the complexities of how difficult it may be to run that kind of esoteric festival nowadays,
Yeah.
where everybody is looking for the audience. The lay audience now are so accustomed to very lay material and lay works that in order to get, I mean, even now, I did have conversations with them when we were there about, they're debating whether to keep the online hybrid, online and in person, because they're having trouble keeping, maybe I'm assuming keeping that theater packed, those theaters packed.
Yeah.
And there has to be an influx of revenue. So I get it. You know what happens with this, Jerry? At some point, it just forces other organizations to, it's the supply and demand, and other organizations will take in. Listen, I feel like your work should be shown there. I saw your work. I mean, your work is extraordinary, Jerry.
Thank you.
But guess what? You got YouTube, man. You got Millennium, man. So eat 'em and smile, like David Lee Roth said, and just play with, eat 'em and smile. Go with YouTube. There's always, where there's a will, there's a way. I don't think they're actually dealing with these, not them, but festivals. There clearly are politics involved. But listen, man, the what channels do we even have? I mean, it was Spielberg and some other people who fought to even get the Criterion channel back on, which it had a different name. I forget what the other name was prior, to show experimental work. So we're in a niche, you know.
Yeah.
How would Frank Zappa survive right now? How? Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about Zappa in this context is regarding AI, because now what they're using this technology to, and they're placing sound bites within like maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds of vocals and music, and they're creating fictional songs. That's why the writers unions are fighting about what's going on with AI, because they can literally come up with scripts at this point.
Yeah.
Generic scripts were lacking heart maybe, but scripts. The thing about Zappa and that world he had created is you can't AI that, man. Because he had his personality, the comedy, the macho thing, the comedy, you couldn't do Zappa right now. I don't think.
Well, it's what you brought up is extremely interesting, Joey, because this is when Frank got the synclavier at the end of his life. He could have this machine play a trumpet note longer than a human could play it. And he could have it play more notes than a human could play it. And, you know, eventually Keneally played a synclavier piece on his guitar, and he says, dude, you're hired because my computer played that. But he actually said this statement once. He says, if I would have had this years ago, I never would have went on the road. And that was, to me, it was like, thank God you didn't, because you needed to go stand in line at a burrito shop and experience human beings in a hotel to write the stuff you did. You needed life experiences to write. Now, there's debate there, and it's all an important thing to delve into is, how do our inventions shape our behavior? So AI is just like inventing words. It's like the same thing words do. Words change things and change our behavior, and they're tools, and they have services and disservices. So it's a heavy thing. But I got to go back to you quoting David Lee Roth, eat 'em and smile. One of my favorite David Lee Roth lines is, here today, gone later today.
I love Diamond Dave. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's been 90 minutes and I always love to go a lot longer, but I was going to suggest that we just do a part 2 so that we can, you know, chill out for a couple
Sure.
months, come back, and because I have a lot more questions. But
Sure.
we really covered a lot, and I really appreciate it. I'm gonna just close out this part 1 with a couple more questions. And
Sure.
thank you, Joey.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure, and I'm so glad we reconnected in Ann Arbor, because I just find so much of what you say resonates. So, you know, the reason I do these interviews and conversations is I want to reinforce my own feelings.
Mhm.
And so when I ask people these questions, I really say there are no right or wrong answers. So I get all different types of answers. But when I get someone ripping into Quentin Tortellini the way you did, I'm like, this dude is on my planet. That was like, because nobody does that. They're like, oh yeah. And so, I mean, it's good to express opinions, but in the long run, what we're trying to do is look at the big picture and suss it out. We can have our personal opinions and our biases, but what we want to see is, why do these things happen, and how do they shape us, you know? And so here's a last 2 questions for part 1. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
What's more important, conviction or compromise? Well, as I described my profession, one of my professions, conviction, I think convict. So, what's more important, a convict's conviction, or the compromise that convict makes after attempting to commit his personal or her personal work of art? I would think that compromise is more important because conviction, man, that puts you on fucking parole and that gets you locked up, man.
Dude, yeah, that's words evoke more than their meaning, Joey. It's so amazing because, you know, that's my oldest question. I've been asking that for 40 years.
Wow.
And in fact, my favorite answer ever was a guy in Ann Arbor. Yeah, I says, what's more important, conviction or compromise? He goes, depends on what you mean by important. So he shifted the emphasis. But it's like 80%, 90% people say conviction. I'm like, everybody's convicted. Compromise takes fucking courage.
Yeah.
And again, seeing that big picture. And then you've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these 3 elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Luck, skill, and what?
Ambition.
Luck, skill, and ambition. I don't believe in luck, so it's only 2. So it's skill. You develop your skill because you fall in love with something. You start working really hard at it. And then comes the second. And there's no such thing as luck. You put yourself in places that it mimics luck, but it's not luck. It's because you busted your ass to get there.
That's Gary Player, the golfer, said, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
Yeah, well.
And then, you know, I changed it. The question used to be, is ambition based more on fear or joy? And how would you answer that?
Ask it one more time, please.
Yeah, you're not for you specifically.
Yeah, right now I hear you.
Your observations of humans in general.
Sure.
Is ambition based more on fear or joy?
Mm-hmm. Ambition is based on fear.
Yeah.
Ambition is a dangerous animal, and it's unfortunately based on fear. And
Yeah.
and if you're not cautious, ambition can hurt you and those around you who love you. So it's a dangerous animal. You have to tread it carefully. You can use it to your advantage as well. But ambition
Yeah.
it's a dangerous creature. But you kind of need it if you want to sort of. You have a bigger picture you're looking at, which is a long road, a career. So you have to have sort of, but that also could be just drive.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's really me and you versus the wording on the question. So
Mhm.
that's how I used to ask it. Is ambition based more on fear or joy? And 80% of people would say fear.
Hmm.
And then positive people would say mine's based on joy. But then I read
Fear of
William,
what? Fear of what?
yeah. Well, failure. I don't know. Fear of not being accepted. Who knows? I mean, I'm just saying a lot of this is me observing how people answer it. I can't
Mhm.
always explain
Yeah.
why. I want to know. I try to probe a little deeper why, but I read William Friedkin a couple years ago in his book, and he said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. So then I changed the wording on the question, and some people even change that. I says, how do you rate luck, skill, and ambition? My friend goes, none of those three. I rate necessity is what caused me to have accomplishments. So who knows? It's forever ending what
I
we.
want to tell you something about William Friedkin.
Yeah, yeah, please do.
I met him, and there was a crowd who went, you know, William Friedkin. They all went up to, and it was the funniest old Hollywood moment, like, casting
Yeah.
couch moment, where he's just like, "Take it easy, boys. Take it easy, boys." So it makes sense that he said what you said. I mean, I'll forever have that. Take it easy, boys. Take it easy, boys. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
he's also, I saw him speak before a bunch of students at USC, and the guy goes, I heard that you once shot a shotgun during at The Exorcist to get a reaction from your actors. On the set, you just shot a gun
Yeah,
loud. And he goes, no, that's not true. I did it many times.
I believe that. Let me ask, Jerry. I don't want to twist this too much, but let me ask you a quick question, and it has to do
Please.
with the '70s.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Now,
Yeah.
is it overrated, or has it aged well, or is it overrated?
You know, I'm a Coppola fan. I think he's an important filmmaker, being from Detroit, making the conversation. You know, the greatest thing Coppola ever said was, I'm an experimental filmmaker. I got sidetracked by Hollywood.
I believe
Because, you know,
Rumble Fish,
THX
man. Yes, I believe that.
THX
Yeah,
played Ann Arbor, the
yeah.
short version of THX. So
I
I
didn't
like,
know that. Wow, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
the short version of THX played Ann Arbor. So
Wow.
he had this huge career. Everybody says Godfather's the greatest
Ah,
film, you know, one of the greatest films. And they say that the commentary track on Godfather 2 is like a must listen. I've never listened to it.
wow.
I don't like
I might
violent
listen to it
films.
tonight now. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't like violent films. And I
Gotcha.
don't, you know, I love when I was in Ann Arbor from 72 to 80 was a
Wow.
prime time. We had Hal Ashby, Robert Altman, Woody Allen, in all the Bergmans and the Fellinis and
At Ann Arbor?
yeah, in Buñuel. I mean, they didn't
Wow,
all come, but we were seeing their
wow,
film. It was a
wow,
rich period, you
wow.
know. We brought Herzog to campus, and we brought you know, Altman to campus. So it was a rich period, and it enabled me to go, okay, I'm going to watch Taxi Driver, Mean
Wow.
Streets, and I don't like violent films. I can't watch. If anything has blood, I just don't watch it. It's my preference now,
No, I
and
hear you.
I just, that's why I never watched a Quentin film
Gotcha.
until the Hollywood film, and
Yeah,
I still covered my eyes during the
yeah.
certain part.
I mean,
So,
have violence. I mean,
to me, Apocalypse is an important film. It's
mhm.
got you know, a big impact on what you know, his wife making Heart of Darkness documentary, the making of, you know, there's so much to it. So, I mean, I'm good at talking about who I think is overrated, because I think the Coen brothers are overrated. Though they're great. And I think Quentin's overrated. And then people will tell me why Quentin is important. But I'll like, well, okay. It's not that I'm going to agree, but I see where people appreciate certain filmmakers and what they've done. Like the friend I'm making a film with right now, Mike Sakamoto, who you met, is watched every Frederick Wiseman film.
Love. Do you not like him?
And
I love Wiseman. He's an
and
asshole in real
he
life, but I love the guy. I love his work.
yeah, and he could say, here's where Wiseman fucked up a little in the middle of this film.
Wow.
Nobody tells you. Nobody says it. He doesn't say he fucked up. He just says, I've observed it so deep that I can understand, and he's Ozu Bresson. So
Wow.
this is important. I like when people teach me about film from their experience. You
Sure.
telling me what you saw in Bergman's Hour of the Wolf. That's what's more important to me than me sitting down and watching a film right now. In my life,
Sure.
I've watched enough films. So yeah, I mean, I can see where, the greatest thing Coppola did, just go back to your answer, is he retired from film, or sort of retired from filmmaking.
He's working
And
on
then,
a film now, but continue.
right. And then he sort of came back. And I don't know how many years ago, this might be 10, 15 years ago. And he started making more small personal films.
Yeah.
And the first film he made was a relationship of two men and a woman. And at the beginning, I didn't even see the film, but at the beginning, the film, they pan over a bed and there's a copy of Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce on the bed. And I'm like, shit, if he did that, he's okay in my book.
That's
So,
great.
so I mean, and I think, maybe his daughter's overrated, but she got up there and won her Oscar. And what'd she say? First of all, I'd like to thank Antonioni. It's like nobody thanks some old art filmmaker on the stage. They go, I want to thank my I always wonder, you got a chance to talk to a gazillion people. What would you say? Like, hey, go watch Hollis Frampton films. Say something enlightening. Or who I love, Joey, if you don't know, is a great New York filmmaker, Emilio D'Antonio. He made Year of the Pig. He made like 8 political docs that kick ass. And everybody. But he made one film called Painter's Painting, and it's a doc on Warhol and all the keeping. And he's just the real deal, dude. He is. He's so up your alley.
Please email me that information. I can look up that, please.
Oh yeah. Emil D'Antonio is like, he is Year of the Pig.
I recently rewatched over the weekend, actually, this Apocalypse, and that's why I asked, because I know you're.
How did it come across?
This is just me speaking. I know people are going to watch this interview, and I asked you, Jerry, because you know this. You know the '60s and '70s, and that the energy was there far more, obviously, than I would, and I was kind of blown away at just how I thought it was overrated, man. I thought it was just. But then I also feel that it's very important, because what it does is it's sort of it summarizes everything that was wrong about the Vietnam War. So I get it, and for that reason it worked. But just the Doors, the end song, it was
give me a break.
Positions. It's just it's just. But his wife's film, to
Heart of Darkness.
To me, it was, thank God that movie exists before that movie, because Heart of Darkness it's the shit.
It puts it into context. And, the root of it is Joseph Conrad, who's immense in the world of literature. So here's a good thing to talk about, Joey. This is important. Where did you see, how big was the screen that you saw Apocalypse Now on?
Listen, I have my own personal movie theater in my home, and the fucking thing is like,
how many people were in the room with you?
Just one person.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. It's the
audience.
Well, McLuhan said a great thing. There's no such thing as a good or a bad movie. It's a good or a bad viewing experience. So if you would have saw Apocalypse Now the week it was released with the audience and they hooped and hollered, your viewing experience might be different. but that's time traveling. So you're trying to be a real film viewer and experience the film. It's so important on the setting of the film, how
Yeah.
you watch. And here's the thing about literature and cinema. McLuhan said that D.W. Griffith carried a copy of Charles Dickens around in his back pocket.
I believe it.
So all he was doing, and Peter Greenaway talks about this.
You like
The
Peter
history,
Greenaway. You bring him up quite a bit. I love Peter
well,
Greenaway. I like him
I
too.
think I think some of his stuff's important, but I
Yes.
think what he says is important is that the history, is the history of cinema is basically filming a play. He said, this is Greenaway. He says, Marty's not doing much different than what T.W. Griffith did. They take a story in a play and they put it on the screen. Now, of course, Marty's more sophisticated and does more this or that, but he's basically telling a story that's been written. So
Yeah.
cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers, is what experimental film is. That's like, well, you don't necessarily have to put a literature based theatrical event on the screen. You can do something different, and
Brackage.
that's what Brackage or whoever, but there's so much richness that could happen with cinema, but basically it's 130 years of filming theater. That's really what it is. There's some variations and all the power to it. But here's the question I'd love to throw to you about D.W. Griffith. He said, he sort of invented the feature film. And he's controversial. He got banned in Ann Arbor 60 years ago, Birth of a Nation. In a half a year ago, a film professor got fired for showing Birth of a Nation. It's like,
Okay.
dude, it's a document of what humans did. He's not promoting what the message is. He's saying, let's study the medium and see how it shaped us.
Yeah.
But D.W. Griffith said 60, 80 years ago, he said, in 2024, cinema will end warfare. That's next year. It's like, DW, you got high hopes. Cinema can't do diddly shit. Like Sidney Lumet said, who's a socially conscious filmmaker. He says, film can't do diddly shit, but it ain't gonna stop me from trying. That's
he went on a date with Tootsie and Tootsie, right? Didn't he go out with Tootsie in the Russian bar? Remember that Russian restaurant?
He's a great filmmaker. And I mean, all these guys, we're lucky we had filmmakers that were making socially conscious films. Look at Barbara Koppel's being celebrated in New York. She's going to be at a screening of Harlan County, man.
Yeah.
Harlan County kicked our ass when that we were like, she took credit cards, made a film on credit cards, set up that yeah, and she kicked ass, and she made the documentary go into the popcorn theater. So I think film can do something, but what it does is really hard. My one friend says all it does is, if James Dean puts his cigarettes in his t-shirt, then kids will do that.
What about Maya Deren? You brought her up earlier. What do you think about Maya Deren and her impact on experimental cinema?
I think Maya Deren's important too. I mean, there's certain experimental people, icons that I like more important, like Bruce Conner, Maya Deren. I'm not a huge fan of Kenneth Anger and Brackage, but I know how important they are. I want to study them all. I don't want to diss them. But then we all have our personal biases,
What about Vito Acconci? What do you think about him and his performance art pieces?
One of my heroes. Mm-hmm. Vito Acconci is just one of the greatest guys. He has so much balls. I have a quote by him. I mean,
I love him too.
Dude, he is like, that's where, he's the East Coast Chris Burden. We had Chris Burden out here, and you guys had Vito Acconci. Yeah,
Chris.
Vito is like one of my heroes. He's like, yeah, he's beyond the beyond, because those are the people who change the
Sure.
form.
Yeah,
The
Karen
form.
Finley's still doing. She's still part of that whole collective.
Oh,
Karen Finley's
Karen's
still
been
doing stuff, by the way.
huge.
She lives
She
not
has
far
been.
from me.
Well, I'm glad you brought her up, because she's been on my list to interview for
Oh,
20
you
years.
must.
I've
That-
negotiated to interview her because she taught in Ann Arbor like 5 or 10 times, or no, maybe 2 or 3 times. She says, okay. And then it didn't come through. And the last time I sent her, she goes, I'm not doing interviews right now. So it's
Ah,
hard. Sometimes I'm always trying to get certain people. So, I'm going to hit you up with a list of people if you could help me hook up with. But
100%.
anyway, yeah. Joey, what a pleasure, man. I'm going to send you some dates, set up part 2. And the most important thing is our friendship has flourished. And we,
Sure.
the way you've made these poetic comments to my stuff is amazing. Just, it's not like thumbs up, I like it. It's like you really are
Jerry,
you're
I
a
love your work. Jerry, I love your work, Jerry.
you're a thinker, but you know how to put it into words poetically,
Thanks.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, Joe. Even
Bless
though
you.
I'm going to hit, even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, this is never going to end. We're going to keep talking forever and
Yes.
ever.
Yeah. Take care and keep making your artwork, please. It's very important stuff. Show your work at Millennium. Promise me.
You too. I love
Sign
your
off.
work.
Goodbye.
Thank you,
Turn it
Joey.
off.
Yeah.